Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time it is a review of the 1986 drama At Close Range. Now this is a request by Bob Gray, and thanks to Bob I decided to check this film out. I heard about the movie, I'd seen the trailer before, I'd heard some good things about it, but I was just kind of, I don't know. The trailer was decent, but nothing about it really grabbed me. But I picked this Blu-ray up during a Twilight Time sale and checked it out, and I liked it. I didn't love the film though. This is one of those movies that, due to its subject matter, it's a film that I don't know. It's one of those movies that I definitely don't have a desire to watch again anytime soon. But that doesn't mean that it's bad. It's just one of those films that, if I'm looking at a bunch of other movies, this is one of the last films I pick up in my collection right now, because it's just a very dark and depressing film. And I know that's the point. It's supposed to be that way, but it gets to be pretty oppressive at times, and it takes away from the whole experience of sitting down and watching a movie. I understand not every film is meant to be entertainment, but this is just one of those films that it's just really hard to watch at times because it lacks that levity that I feel that films like this need to break up the monotony of the bleakness. But regardless, though, I still would say it's still a really solid. I would say it's an underrated film because the film did nothing in the box office when it came out in 1986. It cost $2.6 million. It cost I think it was 5.6 million, and it only made $2.6 million. It actually cost 6.5 million, and it only made $2.3 million. So it couldn't even make a profit on a $6 million budget. It's not even that big of a budget, and it just bombed hard. Now, some of the critics they liked it. I know Siskel and Ebert. I think one of them, they gave it 3.5 stars. Yeah, Roger Ebert gave it 3.5 stars, and it had a lot of good reviews from critics. But it just was a hard sell with audiences. I could see why, because the trailer, it's there, but it's not like there's nothing about the trailer that's like, bam, man, I gotta go out and see this movie. There's really nothing about it that really grabs you in that regard in terms of the advertising. I love the tagline though, like father, like son, like hell. Um, and the film is really well put together and crafted. It's a finely crafted film, and it also has some really remarkable and just excellent performances by a very talented cast. So this is one of those films where the cast does carry it. The script is there. I would say the script by Nicholas Kazan, it's fine, but it's nothing spectacular. The thing is with the script, there isn't any like lines of dialogue that really stand out that are like really great. The moments that happen in the film, some of them are kind of predictable. Other ones, maybe not so much. It talks about show scenes of intensity, but then doesn't necessarily go all the way with some of them, which is a bit of a letdown considering this is supposed to be an intense drama. And there's a lot of stylistic choices by the director and by the script to cut away or not show the intense violence, which I really feel that this film could have benefited from some of that. And it does show the intense violence later on, and that's one of the film's most effective sequences is a very intense, violent scene. But maybe that's why it was that they chose to just not show as much, but show a lot near the end. And if that's the case, then I can understand the stylistic choice, because it does make that sequence near the end so much more shocking. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where there's a few cracks, so to speak, in the script's armor that could have been ironed out or fixed or repaired, but it was just one of those things where they just kind of rolled with what they had. Um, the direction, though, I feel is a real highlight by James Foley. I personally find it to be outstanding. So it's some really outstanding direction. I love the look of the film. It really has this seedy, grimy atmosphere and look to it, which really fits the dead end situation that a lot of these characters felt that they were in the film. It really does fit the setting like a glove. I also love, even though there are some stylistic decisions that I'm kind of on, overall, though, I do like the slick and stylish direction. The way that the sequence is shot when Christopher Walken and his team go in and break into a warehouse and go in and try to get some money out of a safe. The way that it's shot is in a way that kind of reminds you of some kind of Michael Mann-ish sort of stuff, like Thief or some other movies like that. There's definitely style there, and there's a certain flair, and it's another film that you can tell that this is not a guy who's directing this just for paycheck. He's directing this because he not only believes in the film, but he believes that he can really put his stamp on it and put a big enough stamp on it to really stand out. And I really do feel that's what happens with James Foley's direction. That's one of the best things about the film for me, other than the cast and a few other elements. And speaking of the cast, that's easily one of the highlights. Sean Penn as Brad Jr., Christopher Walken as Brad Sr. These two have great fiery chemistry with one another. The sequences that where they are together on screen, you really do buy this bond, this blood bond, so to speak, between the two. Yes, it's in the course of the events of the film, it's a fairly new bond between the two, but you know that it's tenuous, but you can still see that there's a glimmer of hope. But once the film goes on, you figure out more and more about who Brad Sr. really is, and then you find out that there's really not much hope at all here. It's one of those things where Christopher Walken was just using him or just let him join his club because he was blood, and then that's really the main reason. There's really no other reason why he would do that. I mean, you find out the truth about Brad Sr., and it's not pretty. And speaking of pretty, Mary Stuart Masterson is drop dead gorgeous as Terry. She's the love interest of the film. Sean Penn's character, Brad Jr.'s crush. He's totally crushing on her, and finally gets together with her, and he wants to leave with her, and you're rooting for them to get away. I mean, I'm not necessarily rooting for him to get away. I'm rooting for her. I want her to get out of the situation. If Brad comes along, sure. But because she's a small town farm girl who didn't do anything wrong. Like she hung out with the bad crowd, and she's done a few things that are less than desirable. But for the most part, she's innocent. And when the sequence near the end when she gets brutally gunned down is harrowing. It's a very visually affecting and emotionally jarring sequence. It's shocking, it's surprising, the violence is unflinching, and it really hurt because she is portrayed as, in essence, the best character in the film, the most likable character in the film, the one that doesn't have as many flaws, the one that isn't perfect, but at the same time isn't palling around with some criminal and isn't stealing tractors and doesn't hang out with these guys who are going around and breaking the law. I mean, she's hung out with a few people and probably has maybe broken a few laws herself, but not to the extent that the rest of the cast does. The rest of the main cast does. Brad Sr.'s crew and Brad Jr.'s friends. So, yeah, it's the film did a great job making her a sympathetic character. I wish that they had more sympathetic characters. That's one of the issues I had with the film, is that other than Terry, there really is a lot of characters in it that are like, wow, I really, really feel bad for them. Chris Penn's character, who plays Brad's brother, Tommy. Yeah, I did feel for him though, because he got wrapped up in this whole thing, and ultimately dies because of it. And he was definitely trying to get out of it. Like, he knew that something was wrong and things weren't right between Brad Jr. and his father, Brad Sr. So it's one of those things where he wanted to get out, but he was too far deep in, and he was unable to because it was too late. So, I mean, that was definitely pretty tragic. And even more so considering Chris Penn later in his life, he would have a tragic end to his own life. Sean Penn, it was really nice to see him act with his brother Chris. That was a novel thing to see. And Chris showed that he could act just about as well as Sean could. This was a project that Sean had in mind to do for a while, and it shows. Like, Sean really does embody Brad Jr. to a T. Like, he really does become this character. He goes deep in his role, and the character's not really that savory of a guy. He's a very unsavory individual. Like, he's a thug, really. Honestly, he's a young punk, and it makes him kind of hard for you to like. But he has these traits about him that are likable, and so there are things about him that you root for him to just get right. See, that's the thing. You're rooting for him to get right, get with his girl, and get out of this godforsaken place. And that never happens because of what happens with his father, Bradford Sr., played by Christopher Walken. And speaking of Christopher Walken, this is another excellent choice and wonderful selection of Christopher Walken's talents. Like, this is another one of those really great underrated Christopher Walken performances. This is when he had his moments where he's over the top, but for the most of the time he's this calm, cool, collected, smoldering character with an equally as smoldering performance. It was very intimidating. You definitely it's almost like his eyes and his whole personality was just burning through the screen. It was just, he was just igniting it on fire. Perfect casting. I could not think of a better casting choice to play the character of Brad Sr. Millie Perkins plays Julie. Eileen Ryan plays Grandma. Eileen Ryan actually is Sean Penn and Chris Penn's mother in real life, which is, that's an interesting bit of trivia. Tracey Walters in this, who you might know as Bob from Batman. He plays Patch, who is one of Brad Sr.'s crew members, because he has a crew that help him deal out his robberies and things like that, to help him do his dirty work. And of course they get a cut too. One of the other actors is already called, who plays Dickie. You have David Strathairn, who plays Tony. J.C. Quinn. And you also have Candy Clark, who you might recognize from the Blob remake. She's in this as Brad Sr.'s live-in girlfriend. And you also have an early performance by Kiefer Sutherland as Tim, one of Brad's friends. Crispin Glover, who plays another friend of his. Stephen Geofferys, Evil Ed from Fright Night. He's also in this as Aggie. And Crispin Glover's character Lucas and Stephen Geofferys' character Aggie, they start palling along and hanging out with Christopher Walken's character later, and they end up in a ditch. So yeah, they end up dead guys in a ditch. So yeah, they made the wrong decision, that's for sure. And for the most part, the plot, it's a very straightforward plot. There's not really that many twists and turns. It's fairly rote when it comes to that kind of thing, when it comes to the plot line. It's loosely based on a true story, but I'm not really familiar with what the true story is. But yeah, I mean, the plot, that's another thing. It's not really that engaging of a plot line. It's like, yeah, you want Brad Jr. and Terry to get out of this dead-end bumfuck town and get away from his crazy con father. But you really don't have much else other than that. Because I don't really care about the scenes when they're stealing tractors, or Sean Penn is working for his asshole convict dad, or, you know, stuff like that, or the stuff with his friends deciding to work with Christopher Walken, and so on and so forth. It's one of those things where not every part of his story is as engaging as the rest. And I mean, that might have been just what this is what they had to work with, so they just did the best that they could. But this is definitely Sean Penn and Christopher Walken's film. Like, this is their film, their top build for a reason. And if you're going to see the film, I would recommend checking it out for their performances just by themselves, as well as James Foley's direction and other elements too, like the score by Patrick Leonard. I really love this score. It uses the Madonna song "Live to Tell," which is used quite prominently in the film, and it uses it to utmost perfection. Like, it really slows it down. There's some really nice, impressive, and spectacular instrumentals that are used with that particular song. And it's one of those rare films that actually does use a song that's used throughout the entire movie. It's not one of those, okay, you hear the soundtrack song maybe once or twice. Here, it's used in the score, which is, I thought, was unique, because normally you don't see that happen very often in films. And At Close Range is one of those exceptions. The cinematography by Juan Uriza-Anchia, it's solid as well. He works his magic with James Foley. The editing by Howard E. Smith. I would say the editing is definitely not an issue. It's quite excellent. The pacing, yeah, I mean, the plot can kind of lose you. The intensity can get a bit overwhelming at times. So I would say that it could have been a little bit better paced. It's 111 minutes, so it's not like it's over 2 hours or anything. But it does feel like a little bit of a longer film because of the passage of time that goes by and because of the subject material. But all of that being said, I did like the film, but I would say that there are moments where its intensity gets a little bit overwhelming and can be a bit too much to take. And the pacing suffers a little bit because of the story elements that aren't quite that strong. And, you know, with the lack of likable, relatable characters, that hurts it as well. I can't relate to Sean Penn's character. I can't relate to his friends because I don't live in some bumfuck farm town. So, but if you did, if you lived in some dead-end, nowhere town, then I'm pretty sure you could relate to these characters really well. And the film would resonate with you more, but I can't really say that for myself. But, you know, there are some things about it that are quite good. I would say that, you know, not just good, but excellent. There's some very excellent things about At Close Range, and I would say that's worth a look. At least one time for the performances, for the direction. But yeah, if you do check this out, be prepared for some intense sequences, some intense storytelling and beats. So, yeah. I don't know what else to say about the film, except if I were to rate it out of 5 stars, I would give At Close Range 3.5 out of 5 stars. Anyway, thank you for watching. I am going to do something about my throat because apparently talking about this movie has caused an intense reaction in my throat. And until next time, I will see you later. See ya.